there's a video of Kamala Harris. I guess she made a campaign stop at a nursing home. It was on Twitter all yesterday. Kamala Harris stopped at a nursing home, and one of the old ladies that was in the nursing home said to her, "Aren't you advocating for free health care for everybody, or free Medicaid for everybody, Medicaid for all?" And the lady says, "Who's going to pay for it?" And Kamala Harris says, "We are going to pay for it because we're already paying for it with when we go to the emergency room charges." And the old lady said, "Leave our health care, leave my health care alone, leave it alone." And Kamala Harris said, "I promise you I won't mess up your health care." But what struck me was the fact that that old lady was informed. I guarantee you Kamala Harris did not think that that old lady sitting in a nursing home was paying attention to what was going on, but she was. She was paying attention. She was informed. I was like, oh my God. But you see, Kamala Harris told the lie about, well, I'll tell you what, that it's not a lie, but it's an exaggeration, or it's not a whole truth about the emergency room. Yes, a lot of people use the emergency room as health care, but the majority of those people, especially here in California, are illegal aliens. Illegal aliens go to the emergency room because they have to and get medical care. And then, so when she said we pay for it, she's saying in our health care insurance, we ended up paying for it because these people don't have insurance. But they're not supposed to have insurance because they're illegals. So that's the part she left out. Now, there are some poor people that may go to the emergency room, but Medicaid will pay just like any other health insurance. And I'm going to tell you why I know that, okay? I had a relative to live with me, come live with me for about 7 months. This relative, she's a female, she had no insurance, none of that. She was on disability, and she was getting Medicaid. She was around 57 years old at the time. She had a lung disease. This relative, I was the one taking her to her appointment, so I know what she had. She had a lung specialist, a primary family care physician. She went to the same doctors that everybody else went to. And she had everything done for free through Medicaid. Now, I didn't even know anything about what Medicaid was and any of that until she lived with me for that short time. She had cataract surgery on both eyes for free. She didn't pay a dime. All her health care, everything was free, and she was getting Medicaid. So that was my first time ever knowing anything about Medicaid. But then this was before Obama had gotten elected. So when Obama got elected and he started saying that poor people didn't have insurance, and I was thinking, well, that's not true. They may not have insurance, but they have Medicaid. So the whole thing about poor people not having insurance was what was driving this whole Obamacare thing, which ended up harming middle-class people that were working that ended up losing their insurance. And the reason they lost their health insurance is because when this Obamacare thing kicked off and they ended up, their premium skyrocketed and they could no longer afford it. This was working people, not poor people. But see, it was the working people that was supposed to make this thing work so that the people that were not working could benefit from it. But you see, that doesn't work. That doesn't work. Somebody's gonna it's gonna either be too expensive, or all kinds of things happen when you try to socialize medicine, healthcare, or anything else. Because what socialism does is the government, people pay taxes into the government. The government takes all these taxes from working people, and they try to spread everything around so everybody will have the same thing, but everybody is not contributing. So you're going to go bankrupt that way. And your health care is not going to be that good. And I'm going to give you some examples of why I know that. I worked in England for 2 years. From 2013 to 2015, I worked in England. And these are some of the things that I witnessed firsthand with the healthcare system over in England, the NHS system. NHS. Now, I know I have some people from the UK that are subscribers. So I'm going to tell you what I learned, and you can chime in the comment section, but this is what I saw for my own self. Now, I had a neighbor that lived across the street from me in England. She was a retired NHS nurse. She had worked for the NHS for 40 years, and she was, they call them pensioners. We call them retirees. She and her husband both were retirees. And so maybe they were in their middle 60s. So one day she found a lump on her neck up in here somewhere. So she tried to get an appointment. She tried for at least 4 months. At least. It might have been 6 months, but it was at least 4 months before she finally got a doctor's appointment to find out what this thing was in her neck. In other words, was it cancerous? What was it? Okay. I remember coming home from work and going over there and asking her, "You have an appointment yet?" And she's like, "No." And I used to get so angry because I was used to the U.S. Like if I have Kaiser, if I want to go to the doctor tomorrow, if I need an appointment tomorrow, not urgent care, but an appointment with a doctor, I can see them tomorrow. That's because I'm paying. But when you have socialized medicine, you have to wait your turn, wait till they can see you. Now, this woman retired from over 40 years working in the NHS. She even wrote a book about it. So she used to tell me all kinds of stories about the healthcare system over there. So I would get upset because I really cared for this lady, because the day I moved in across the street, she came over and rang my doorbell, and she told me, "Anything you need, my husband and I, you make sure you ask us. We're going to take care of you." And they did. They were like my parents over there. So I had grown fond of this lady. And to see her needing the health care and couldn't get it when she needed it upset me. So it took at least 4 months for her to finally get an appointment to see what this thing was. Was it cancerous, basically? So she got that appointment. So she found out that it wasn't cancerous or anything, but it needed to be removed. So the next step was scheduling a surgery to have it removed. That took another 4 to 6 months before she could even get surgery to have it removed. She said every time she would call, they would put her off. She said one time they told her, "You need to just be glad you don't have cancer and just wait." And I said, I can't believe this. Not only that, she had about 3 friends to die of cancer while I was there. 3. And they were around her age, and none of them knew they had cancer until they collapsed. Okay? One was a guy that collapsed at church. He collapsed at church, and they took him to the emergency room, and they scanned him, and he had cancer. He didn't live for maybe 2 months. Another one was one of her best female friends. I mean, she was crying. I went over to her house one day after work. She was in tears, and I was crying too because I was hurting for her. Her friend collapsed at home and found out, rushed her to the emergency room and then scanned her, because she'd always say they scan you. I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "They scan you and they find out, is there any cancer in the emergency room?" So a friend had brain cancer. Her friend didn't make it maybe 2 months after that. Another one lady in the corner. She lived on the corner of the street that we were on. I remember seeing her, and she went just like that. She didn't know she had cancer. And then when she found out, it was too late, and she lived maybe a couple of months. So that's what I'm talking about. The health care. Now, this is what I witnessed firsthand with the healthcare system in England, in the UK. Now, the same lady had told me that years ago when she had her son, they had a grown son. And she said, because they do have private hospitals over there where you pay. And she said, I had my room, I had a room, and she was going on and on about having a room. And I said, well, wait a minute. Don't you have rooms? She says, no, we have beds. So when you are in the hospital, you don't have a room, you have a bed, and you have this curtain pulled over you. So she was going on and on and on about how comfortable it was to have a room and privacy in the private hospitals. And I said, well, we have that all the time in the U.S. We have a room. So that's one thing. Now, she also talked about a good friend of hers that had ovarian cancer. Now, this was like years ago. And she said she found out she had ovarian cancer, and nobody could do anything for her in the UK at that time. And so her friend was very wealthy. She said this friend was like a millionaire. So she said her friend contacted specialists in the United States and told them that she had the money, she'd pay the cash if they would just help her. And her friend came to the United States and got help and she was fine. She got, they treated her for the cancer or got rid of the cancer or whatever, and she was able to live. She lived years later. She said her friend ended up dying from something, falling and dying from something else about 20 some odd years later. But she always talked about how thankful she was of the healthcare system in the United States saving her friend's life. Now, getting back to the beds. Now, when I was in England, I started a history and art group, and we would meet at historical sites every month. So one month, I had a guy in my group that was an archaeologist, and he was about maybe mid-60s, early 70s, and he walked with a cane. And he told me, he said, now, Pat, I won't be able to make it to next month's meetup because I'm going to be having surgery. I said, okay. I don't know whether it was his hip, his lower back, or what, but he was going to have surgery. Well, the next month, he shows up. And I'm like, what are you doing here? He says, well, they gave my bed away. I said, what do you mean they gave your bed away? He says, they assign you a bed. People are assigned to beds for his surgery. But if someone else comes along that's in worse shape than you, they can bump you and give your bed to somebody else. This is what he told me. So his bed was bumped, and he really needed that surgery. He was in a lot of pain. But this is what I'm saying. This is the socialized medicine that they have over there. Now, if I am wrong, I invite anybody from the UK to comment. But this is what I was told. Okay, this is what I was told. So that's another thing. Now, the hospital that was near where we lived, I lived in Lytham. Blackpool was down the street, and Blackpool was where the hospital was. And my friend that lived across the street, that was the retired nurse, told me that the ambulance, because they don't have enough beds, ambulances are stacked up outside of the hospital with people in the back of them. They have to just line up, all up against all of them down the road, ambulances with people in the back of them, because they can't unload them because there's not enough beds. And these are people that, probably need emergency care. And this is in Blackpool Hospital. Okay? So those are the things that I experienced living in the UK under that system. And I used to tell her, I said, well, if I ever get sick, I'm leaving here. I said, I used to praise the Lord, don't let anything happen to me while I'm here so I can get back home and get some medical care. Because I witnessed what these people, I'm talking, now you could go and get, cold medication or something, at the pharmacy really quick, but that's nothing. That's nothing serious. But if you're really sick and need surgery and in a lot of pain, this is the wait that you have to wait all this time. I was on a train traveling somewhere while I was over there, and I was sitting next to a lady that was a hospital administrator, and she told me that the NHS was bankrupt. And she says her job was so stressful because of the fact that, they don't have the money, because this is what happens. Majority of the people that's using that free health care are not putting into it. Okay? That's how you go bankrupt. You have people, everybody's using it, but everybody's not paying taxes because everybody's not working. So more people are using the services than the people that's putting in, and it's basically bankrupt. And she talked about how stressful her job was. This is a hospital administrator told me this. So I believed her. I had no reason to doubt what she said, or my neighbor who was a nurse for 40 years in the NHS. So no, I have no reason to doubt that. Now, I had two of my colleagues' wives got pregnant while they were over there, and they went home. They packed up and said, we're out of here, because they said, we're not going to trust this healthcare system, because you got to realize we're from the United States and we have good healthcare systems, so we're not used to all that. So they didn't want to risk their pregnancies, so they packed up and went home. That was two of my colleagues' wives, and my colleagues, they all went home. But I'm saying the reason they left is because the wives got pregnant and said, we're not going to stay here and put up with this healthcare system. So I was very, very glad to hear that old lady. She was informed. She called Kamala Harris, and she said, leave our health care alone. And I thought it was hilarious. But all of these people that's running around here that's saying, we want all this free health care for all, they don't understand, because they've never lived under it. As a matter of fact, a lot of people come from other countries to get health care here, because we have the best health care. But when you socialize it, it's no telling what will happen. And like I say, people have Medicare, Medicaid. They have that. My relatives had it. She had all kinds of things done. And she never went, and she doesn't live with me anymore. She's back home in Tennessee, but she gets everything taken care of. She doesn't have to wait for anything, and she doesn't pay for anything. She's poor. She's been on Medicaid. She's never worked that much in her entire life. She's never really had a job, but she gets disability, so therefore she gets Medicaid. And that's when I saw how they benefited. You wouldn't even know if you went to the doctor's office and sat beside her. You wouldn't know that she was on Medicaid. You'd think that she had the same health care insurance as you had. You couldn't tell the difference. That's what I'm getting at. And I'm so glad that that old lady called out Kamala Harris and said, leave our health care alone. Now, I'm not worried about Kamala Harris even being able to do anything to our health care, because I know that she'll never be elected president. But I thought it was hilarious how that old lady in a nursing home, called her out. Have a blessed day.